Perhaps one of the most ignored decks in recent Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the modern version of Plant Link. It's overcomplicated and time-consuming, very overpriced, and its best players don't really play Yu-Gi-Oh! Anymore. But despite not seeing as much competitive success as their competitive heyday, plants have only gotten stronger, gaining additional engines to add to the ball of plant mass. Plus, in Master Duel, they are untouched by the ban list, because no one cares. It lets this deck produce some insane inboards. From Dark Ruler No More proof Rikka tributes, to simple Therion Omni negates, to just throwing out the Cactus Bouncer lock because it's searchable. You can counter any particular deck if you just lock in hard enough. The modern build tends more towards 60 cards as a way to hide its 15 bricks, and that's where the deck's difficulty comes from. Luckily, most of these are only pseudo bricks, meaning they don't stop your main combo. But the cost is, you have to on the fly weave these less than optimal pieces into your plays, while managing an opponent's interactions. Disruption-wise, this deck is mostly the same it's always been. It's not killable by any single hand trap on its own, but the Mulcharmys and Max C are your biggest issues. Of course, you do have answers to these. In this video, I will be explaining each of the different engines that go into Plant Link, your main combos, how to play around common disruptions, and then going into builds for both Master Duel and the physical TCG. If you want more, please go ahead and tribute that subscribe button. At the core of this deck is the singular vanilla monster and the bullshit he enables. Sunseed Genus Lockeye goes into a Link 1 that enables the following combo. Link into Sunavalon Dryas. Dryas' effect searches Sunvine Sowing. Sowing lets us special summon one Sunseed monster from the deck, then take 1000 effect damage. This then lets us summon out Sunseed Twin and trigger Dryas' effect when we take effect damage. Chainlink 1 use Dryas' effect to summon out Sunvine Healer from the extra deck. Chainlink 2 use Sunseed Twin to summon back out Sunseed Genus Lockeye from the graveyard. Then use Sunvine Healer's effect targeting Sunavalon Dryas to gain 300 life points. This will be relevant later. From this point in time, we now have 4 monsters on the field with only one restriction, or plant locked in the extra deck. This position is so advantageous and low cost, we can do literally anything from it. Most commonly, this will mean making Aroma Jasmine to extend into any plant engine from our deck, and then go into Aroma Seri Jasmine for full combo. More on this in a bit. But this is why the deck plays around 10 to 15 different ways to get into it. Unexpected Die, Primite Roar, and Lordly Load, and even surprisingly Ragnaraika Evil Seed. They all let you do this without your normal summon, meaning you either have more extenders when you want to play through Disruption, or if you're ahead, you can set up for a Cactus Bouncer. Now that we understand our core combo, what inboards can we actually build with that? This is where our next 3 engines come in: Aroma, Therion, and Rikka. Rikka are your most flexible disruptions. This engine is most commonly contained by a very simple combo line. Rikka Petal searches Mudan the Rikka Fairy. You can summon Mudan by tributing a plant monster. Then on summon, Mudan the Rikka Fairy searches Rikka Concon. Concon lets us tribute an opponent's monsters as cost for our Rikka effects. Concon also lets us set one Rikka spell or trap from the deck. We can either search for Rikka Sheet for a very powerful back row disruption, or we can search for Rikka Glamour to do combo extension. Glamour lets us tribute a plant monster to search 2 plant monsters of the same level, one of which has to be a Rikka. This list is built to be able to access multiple strong options, but the main option is going to be Rikka Princess plus Primite Rikka Fairy. This is instant access to the main disruption this engine makes. Use Primula's effect to summon itself in response to the tribute that was used to search it. Use Princess's effect to summon itself, then overlay the 2 monsters in the Rikka Queen Strenna. Use Strenna's effect, attaching Princess, to add back an option from graveyard to hand. Rikka Strenna has the effect that when tributed, special summon a rank 5 or higher plant XYZ monster from the extra deck, then attach this monster to it as material. This goes in the Sacred Tree Beast Hyperton, who's a monster negate, and potentially a spell negate, or in the Teardrop the Rikka Princess, who's a quick effect tribute. In the grave, Rikka Princess is a quick effect monster negate that tributes as cost. With our field spell, we can negate and tribute an opponent's monster, or we can tribute our own Strenna to make a negate on the opponent's turn. This mini combo is absurdly strong, and can be started by access to any of our Rikka cards. Rikka Petal and Rikka Concon combine to make this deck absurdly resilient in grind games, and the opponent has to remove both the field spell and Petal from grave. Or we will just keep going. The Rikka side of our deck is also the best at flexing around hand traps. Get Drolled? Just use Petal's effect to send Princess to grave, or set through Con. Get Shifted? Well, just go full combo anyway with the minor penalty of having no recursion. Get Max Seed or Mulcharmy? Well, then you can just stay low summons and use Con to set up back row. Having any of the Rikka cards in your hand is never going to be a brick. They're all fantastic extenders and open up so much unique and specific counterplay. The funniest example I can think of is using a Primula's effect on the resolution of getting Nibiru to start building back a board. This has happened to me in an actual event, and it's still one of my favorite all-time moments from playing Yu-Gi-Oh! The point is, think creatively. Therions, by comparison, are the simplest part of the engine. They're a simple gateway to an Omni-Negate. Therion Lilyboria summons itself by equipping itself with a plant monster from grave. Then it can send one card from hand or field to graveyard to search a Therion spell and trap. The cost can be the card it's equipped with, bulk from hand or field, or even itself. The search target is going to be Therion Disco Coliseum. Disco Coliseum lets us then search Therion King Regulus from deck, summon King Regulus equipping Boya, and you've got a simple Omni-Negate. Technically, this can happen at any point in your combo before you're locked in the plants, but if you can, I recommend doing it before you reach 5 summons. The second important thing to know is that Therion Lilyboria is really good at being an extra material on board, especially since it can send its equipped card as cost and can technically search itself through Disco Coliseum. Boya is a remarkably helpful extender that follows up a failed starter into an Omni-Negate and a Link 2. Aroma do 2 things for our deck. They're a starter off of Aroma Lilith Rosalina, and because of Aroma Lilith Rosemary, we can search any 2 plant cards if we make a Link 3. So let me explain how the Aroma Lilith combo works. Use the Link 3's effect to search Aroma Blessing. Blessing will then let you place Humid Winds directly from your deck, discarding some filler. Once in graveyard, Blessing lets you fusion summon using materials from the graveyard if your life points are higher than your opponent's. Assuming you did a Sunavalon combo to set up, then you're good. You go into Aroma Lilith Magnolia. Use Humid Winds effect to search Aroma Lilith Rosalina, then use Humid Winds to gain 500 life points. This life point gain will trigger Rosemary's effect to special summon Aroma monsters from your hand. Special summon Rosalina, then use Rosalina's effect to summon a Romage Laurel from the deck. Link off the Jasmine and Magnolia into Aromasary Jasmine, then do the same with your Rosalina and Laurel. Laurel's Grave effect will then trigger to gain life points, letting you use both Jasmine search effects. If you haven't normal summoned, you can go for Cactus Bouncer. If you don't already have them in hand, you can search your Rikka starters. If you need situational options, you can grab your side decked in Tex. Really, it opens up everything. Before we move on, we can't forget that the fusion monster actually has insane effects. Magnolia is an interesting card, since it provides effect destruction protection to your plant monsters, which is going to be relevant in a lot of matchups. And Magnolia has non-targeting banishment removal, as well as board-wide attack gain. This is all bonkers, and will come up. But the standard combo does mulch Magnolia for Link fodder. If I have the resources to do so, I like to leave Magnolia out. It makes Cactus Bouncer much more threatening, and in formats like Master Duel, where blowouts are going to be more popular, it is objectively a much stronger play to do so. Now, let me explain the Rosalina as a starter. If you just normal summon out Rosalina, you can do a singular Laurel into Jasmine for a search. The pivot comes when we search Therion Lilyboria. Boya gives us a free special summon and a search for Disco Coliseum and or King Regulus. But the extra monster on the field lets us then tribute into a different engine. Rosalina isn't as strong as her other starters, but it adds a lot to the consistency to have it double as 1. Ragnariaka is a secondary option for doing the Sunavalon combo. Let me explain. Evil Seed summons itself with a discarded plant monster. On summon, Evil Seed searches both Ragnaraika Samurai Beetle and Ragnaraika Bloom, then banishes Samurai Beetle from hand. You can then use Bloom to summon back the Steel Beetle, link off the Evil Seed and Beetle in the Ragnaraika Skeletor Soldier. This will trigger Beetle's effect, letting us revive our discarded plant monster. Then we can use Skeletor Soldier to revive back the Evil Seed. Link the Skeletor Soldier into Jasmine. Use Jasmine to tribute into Lone Fire Blossom, use Lone Fire Blossom to tribute the Jasmine into Sunseed Genus Lockeye, and then boom, you have the standard plant combo. Lastly, we can't forget this deck's We Goofed button. Dancephione on summon lets us excavate the top 3 cards from our deck, then summon up to 2 plants hit from this. We send the rest to the graveyard. These monsters cannot be used as link material. Dancephione also lets us change the levels of the monster she points to a plant monster's level in grave. This effect of summoning from the top deck is entirely luck-based, but the odds aren't terrible. It plays around some hand traps, and it means any 2 plant monsters is a dice roll get out of jail free card. Theoretically, it can hit a combo starter. You don't want this to come up, but it can, and it's better than giving up immediately in bad situations when you've been otherwise beat. A 30 to 40% chance is always better than a 0% chance. Now that we understand how this deck works, let's put it all together in our 3 bread and butter combos. We got the full bread and butter from Unexpected Die, Here's the full combo from Ragnariaka. Lastly, here's one from the Aroma Lilith starter. Here's an important section where I talk about some of the edge cases this deck gets into. They can be a bit basic, but they're worth remembering as options you have available to you. Rikka Glamour can get you to anything in our deck. While our main use is going to be to get to our Strenna plays, it does anything as long as we don't mind making it kind of jank to actually make Strenna. If we need to get to a starter, it can be used to search for a petal, then a Ragnaraika. This works with or without our normal summon, making it useful if you've already been Ash Blossomed. In a grind game, this can mean going for a Snowdrop and then a Therion Lily. Or, so we can get multiple tributes off of Glamour, you can go for a Princess and Angel Trumpeter after already going through a Princess and a Primula. It's not the end-all be-all for Glamour's use, but it opens up strange doors, especially if you already have some of the pieces. Rosalina has a secondary effect in hand to gain life points as a quick play. This means, on top of any Jasmine, it can be a search for any monster. It doesn't tend to come up that much, but it can extend combos and play through disruptions in tight spaces. For example, if you do the Rosalina starter line, it can still trigger to give you searches. This does come up in quite a few places, and it can be worth thinking around. For example, if you make a Jasmine and you have another starter in hand, you can use the Rosalina to try to bait out a disruption and figure something else out from there. It does come up at times. So if someone gives you a non-plant monster to your side of the field, here are some ways you can get rid of it. Link it off into Ragnaraika Skeletal Soldier, tribute it off with Jasmine or Rosemary, or send it with Therion the Liboria. Now these are very limited options, but none of your other plant tributes will work. So you're going to want to figure out how to get to these three, because it is very annoying to have a non-plant monster on field. They're effectively Ojama tokens. Just be ready for that odd matchup where someone will try it. This section is just confirming that you can activate Unexpected Die, chain Primite Roar, and summon out 2 vanilla monsters. This matters and it allows us to justify running so many copies of these cards. Alright, here's the weird tech in my list. Angel Trumpeter is a weird option that will make established plant players a bit iffy. The newly included Primite engine gives us 2 effects outside of just summoning Seed. First, Roar allows us to banish a monster on an opponent's normal summon, but only if it's less attack than a normal monster on field or grave. Seed is unfortunately just a 0 attack monster, but Angel Trumpeter is a very healthy 1900. Second, so Primite Lordly Load lets us summon a vanilla monster from deck, grave, or hand, but we're locked out of effect monsters on the field for the rest of the turn. Of course, this is a plan D, and it can work with Sunseed Genus, but only if all we care about is an extra link material. Angel Trumpeter gives us access to potential rank 4 with the right extenders, and it sets Roar's second effect live. From this one Lordly Load, we get a Disruption and a material. Both these effects might seem minimal or tertiary, and they are, but in a format where we have to expect to be under 3 to 4 high impact hand traps, we need every little pivot imaginable. The Banish, for example, is massively helpful against normal summon-based decks like Blue Eyes, since it reduces the materials they can build with, and it doesn't take our tribute with Princess. The load rank 4 play comes up more than it should, under cards like Droll, Purulia, and Shifter. That's a big thing. Angel Trumpeter makes Lordly Load a bit safer under Droll. Plus, I've come to the conclusion that we can just cut a Seed, and we'll still have 2 vanilla monsters for our effects, and we're not running any more bricks. It somehow works out. Plus, a second level 4 gives us 1 more use of a Glamour Tribute Search when we're only running 1 Primula, and that does actually matter a lot. Angel Trumpeter being a tuner doesn't matter here, and that really upsets me. This is unrelated to its evaluations of a card. I just really want better plant synchros. So one of the most important side deck cards for this deck is Cactus Bouncer. It locks out of all special summons, and it has lines to get to it through several big hand traps and can auto-win in certain matchups. However, it is one of the biggest bricks in the game, so it's kind of an auto loss going second with it. I'd recommend side decking it and only bringing it out in needed matchups or when you're going first. Some builds of some decks really struggle to out Cactus Bouncer. Like, in some cases, it really can just be open infinite impermanence or lose. Crazy. Before playing under hand traps, let's talk about playing around hand traps. You need to be playing in such a way as to bait out interactions from an opponent. Luckily, you're at an advantage because people refuse to learn how this deck works and what the choke points are. Here's my general order of operations for how I like to attempt my combos. This is playing around low impact hand traps like Ash, Imperm, Nibiru, and of course Droll. This list should be taken as a general guide and shifted to each individual matchup. To understand the top section, we need to know 3 things. First, the highest possible value plays with the least investment if uninterrupted come from the Sunavalon combo. It puts us perfectly into the Search 2 combo and doesn't have to use our normal summon, enabling Cactus Bouncer. Unexpected Die and Primite Roar eat negates at minimal cost as well, making them really solid for opening up plays. Second, while we don't really ever want to be drolled, if you are getting drolled, it's best to be after the Search for Sunfine Sowing. It maintains access to Jasmine, Dancephione, and the Behangle Lancer, plus whatever we have in hand. Third, this is a deck that takes about 3 to 4 hand traps to put down effectively. It takes some skill, but you can pivot around anything. If they hand trap enough, start extra deck summoning with the materials and try to build a board. The lower sections of this list are entirely situational, but generally it's how you think of these. Let's talk about playing through hand traps. This is a visualization of your bread and butter combo going through the entire deck for plants. It's a bit much, but it is good at visualizing where we can expect to be hand trapped. For example, you can get ashed at Sowing or Jasmine, and it'll cut off access to your engine. The way I think of playing through this is just to treat any of the cards down the line that you already have in hand as skips to that specific part of the combo. For example, if we have Rikka Glamour, we can just skip into a Princess Strenna combo. Most of your bricks should not be thought of as bricks, they're just extenders you don't want in your hand. Of course, this is only the most basic way of looking at it. These skips should also include jumping into your other basic combos. For example, with Rosalina, you could do a pivot into Rikka, or we could do a variant of the Rosalina starter combo with an extra material fully ready. You can try stuff like this until you run out of starters and extenders. If that's still not enough, and we get hand trapped again and again, we're not out of it. Any 3 link materials is a combo skip, and we've been spamming the board full of them this entire time. And let's say assuming we do get hand trapped a 3rd or a 4th time with only 2 monsters. Well, you can do a Primite play, or you can do a Sylvan Hail Mary. While this deck is complicated, when you break it down, it's not harder than any other deck. It's a few main combos you have to learn, and know how to jump between them. Well, that's until we get to playing around the high impact traps like D-Shifter, Droll, and the Mulcharmies. Then you need new combos entirely. First up is Nibiru, who's more of a middle impact hand trap. It's likely to get dropped after the summon of a Jasmine, since it takes away the most amount of our resources. We, of course, don't want this, and there's 2 combos we can do to pivot to safety. First up is making Therion King Regulus. The extended combo has you making him on your 8th summon. However, if you have Lily in hand, you can change the combo to make him on your 4th summon. This is a much safer line overall, but it does rely on you opening 2 cards. Our second option to play around Nibiru is the setup for Rikka Princess. Basically, instead of extending into Lily, you can attempt to go directly into Rikka Petal, thus ending a potential Nibiru if they withhold too much. This relies on an opponent not knowing when to nib. It does lose an Omni Negate, but it punishes misplays, and it sets up a Petal and Grave, which is important for grind games. If you've sided in Cactus Bouncer, it's absurdly powerful to set this up, since you can go into it from Rikka Glamour. Princess setups aren't as common or as strong, but you ought to look for establishing a Rikka on the field as fast as possible. For example, if you have a Princess and Primula in hand, just normal summon the Primula early in the combo. I do expect the Nibiru to be a secondary option for hand traps, like it's going to come after the Ash or Imperm, thus making it kind of hard to just play through it, because you've already probably burned through at least one of your starters. And having 3+ in hand is kind of difficult to do consistently. So you want to pivot to safety as much as you can. It can be a bit difficult, but it is worth doing. Alright, that was the easy part. Here's where it gets difficult, and we have to really understand our options. I've already talked a bit about playing around Droll by default, but it's worth explaining the combos you can do under it. Assuming you get Drolled under the ideal search of Sunvine Sowing, you can activate Sowing and progress through the Sunavalon combo, making Jasmine, making Dancephione. It isn't always the best idea to go into Dancephione. It depends really on what's in your hand and how okay you are with risking it. Typically, I like to make that call based on if my opponent has hand trapped me multiple times already. I do like Dancephione because it gets us to a minimum of 2 to 3 disruptions plus recursion from the cards used. Of course, this goes up depending on what we already have in hand and if we have hand traps, like any of the Rikkas, Con, Therions, or Lone Fires. If you already have a level 4 in hand, for example, you can always get to the full Strenna setup by just using it as a link material for Dancephione in the first place. It is a bit jank, but it does work. The Dancephione combo line works best under Sunavalon, but it can function in a weird pseudo version with Ragnarika, or just enough generic board spam. So you gotta keep the hand in context. A much harder Droll pivot is if we get Drolled attempting to do the Rosalina line, which is already rough as a tertiary line. If you have Princess, Primula, or Evil Seed, you can safely pivot into a Petal and Behangalomancer. If not, you either pick a single disruption or Hail Mary with Dancephione. D-Shifter is my favorite card to play under. because it makes all of our combos really stupid. And we lose any recursion, but it doesn't stop our plays at all. Let's assume we're shifted immediately. If we have unexpected die, we can still summon 3 monsters off of the Sunavalon combo. You now have a special summon lock and a monster negate and tribute for 1 card through D-Shifter. This can very easily play through multiple hand traps if you have a Glamour, Rosalina, or Princess in hand already. This combo also works from any way to get to 3 monsters, so have fun. You just have to be sure it's not going to be a grind game and maximize your board as far as it will go from the start. Mulcharmy Fuwalos is the easier Max C to play around. It's basically going to be an engine split. Focus on the non-extra deck based engines of Rikka and Therion. This can give them a flat -1 from Fuwalos, while maintaining several disruptions from your end. If you have to use the other 2 engines, it's not going to be the end of the world. For 2 draws, you can access Jasmine and the Rikkas from Rosalina or Evil Seed. It's more worth it to do it from the Evil Seed, since you can easily attempt a Cactus Bouncer lock, where your opponent's draws are going to matter less. Purulia is the harder Mulcharmy to play under. It stops most of our main starters and punishes our best extenders. Luckily, it doesn't stop the Sunavalon combo at all, so we get a full board of setup to try and deal with it. Really, this tends to play out the exact same as the before mentioned Dancephione combos. However, this time we're going to actually pivot into a Mudan for a full Rikka engine from Cactus Bouncer Lock and a Princess. Our other starters are also rough dealing with it, but you can do similar plays. If we've been max seed, hard pivot to the Rikka line and hope. Usually, it's not a fun time. Now we can finally get in the deck building. It's a bit of a mixed bag, because we first need to make several format-dependent calls, because they determine how we can play. We need to answer 3 questions. What hand traps are good this format? Do we want to all-in going first, or do we need to hard prepare for going second? And lastly, do we need to focus on long grind games, or can we focus more on maximizing consistency? I've built both a going first and a going second list to show you some differences. Chances are you're going to be side decking in some of the other engines anyway. It's just a big question of the mindset you want to sit down to the table with. Well, and consistency. Slower formats where we need to grind games, we will need to double up on some key cards to ensure we can get multiple big interactions out of them. For example, secondary Rikka pieces or a second Aroma Laurel. Plus, we may want to consider niche options like Elysiel the Sylvan High Protector. I hope these are enough to get you started, but we can look at some other topping lists if we need. Here's a top 32 list by Julius Schwarzkopf. It doubles down on hand traps and opts to use Forbidden Droplets as its going second tool. Here's the winner of the German National Championships, also by Julius. It's an older list for an older format, but those techs are worth acknowledging. Blink Out is the biggest tech, letting you effectively retry a negated Dryas. Or we can look at Therion Alasia, which opts for more board building and consistent synergy, while you're under your own Ragnariaka lock. It's crazy. Also, we have Predaplant Spider Orchid for spell and trap removal. And here's the most recent list, piloted by Adrian Chavarra for a second place finish at the San Jose Regional. You can take a lot from this side deck, and the great focus on going second. For these lists, I want you to take that this is a very adaptable and very nuanced deck. Get creative, get knowledgeable in the format, and get rewarded. Now, oh boy, it's time for the elephant in the room. This deck has a very unfortunate alternative win condition, and that's winning or losing due to time. In Master Duel, it's very simple. The longest combo you do runs out the clock, especially since you're often going to be getting to it through disruption. It's like actually 50 steps. You're going to want to input faster than probably once every 3 seconds, and do your thinking while your opponent's playing and the game's loading. In the physical TCG, Plant Link wins by default when going into time, since you can super easily stack life points in your favor. This encourages some players to play for time. I'm not supposed to mention it since it could get me, also a plant player, in trouble. But the truth is that this deck has so many unnecessary steps and redundant combos that you can almost always hit time without actively playing into it, especially when an opponent doesn't know your deck. It's no wonder that players just start playing a card every 5 seconds, instead of every 3 seconds, or asking for interruption a bit more than otherwise. You can be either direct and desperate, or as subtle as you want to be. If you've gone the time against a plant player, know it was engineered to happen. It doesn't even need to be a rule-breaking or conscious thing. By actively choosing to play the plant deck, that player is inherently going into games that will take longer. I hate it. It's miserable and unfun, but Konami has baked it into the rules to reward this problematic playstyle. So if you're playing plants, you have to be aware of it. More so than you do in Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you have to watch your opponent because they're all going to do it because it's so efficient. Alright, that's where I feel like stopping, so that's where I'm stopping this video. I hope y'all appreciated this really long guide for the deck. It's one of my all-time favorite decks due to how rewarding the skill expression is. You can play through most of the boards and you can get to any in board for the matchup. It's remarkably fun. I recommend it if you're willing to take the time to learn the deck. Please subscribe if you want more. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.